Hey, how you doing, everybody? Justin Skizek here from the Rise Up podcast. I am here with the one and only Phillip Bosen. He is the CEO and Chief Strategist at Bosen Associates, otherwise known as the Jeweler's Coach. Phillip, what's up, man? Welcome to the Rise Up podcast. Glad you're here today.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So, I'm going to start. I usually kind of start 30,000 foot view here. If you can kind of give me the lay of the land here, how did you get into the business? How did you get to building your consultancy, and how do you work with jewelers and businesses all around the United States? How did you do that? Like, what brought you into that?
Well, I guess to start at the beginning, I started in the jewelry industry when my dad bought a little jewelry store in the early 1980s. I was working for him as a kid, and he wanted to teach me everything I needed to know. So he was soldering gold chains and sizing rings and that sort of thing. And I made some gold nuggets out of necklaces accidentally. And then I melted a few rings and even burnt a diamond. And I clearly had no aptitude to be at the jeweler's bench. My dad said, he said, Phillip, I don't know if you're going to make it in the jewelry industry at all, but I'm pretty sure you're not going to make it as a bench jeweler. So maybe you should learn the business side of the jewelry business. And I kind of took it to heart and did. I really, really love business of the jewelry business. And I was fortunate enough to have some great mentors and have had a 4+ decade career as a retail jeweler. And then to more specifically to your question regarding how this consultancy of Bosen Associates and the Jeweler's Coach came to be, after being in retail for many, many years, I'd really decided I wanted to take my talents and the things I'd learned on the road and offer it to other jewelers. And I made a few phone calls and just kind of testing the waters. And a few people said, yeah, we'd pay you to rent your brain. And I just went for it. So I left retail full time and then did that for 8 years full time. And now I'm kind of back in retail, but also consulting part time. So I'd say, before and after hours, luckily with different time zones and the things we learned during COVID of remote and being able to be on a hike, but with my cell phone, and it's worked out great.
So when you're going, well, tell me about the back in retail. Or do you have your own store, or what's the lay of the land there?
No, I was one of my clients recruited me to be the director of sales, and I'm work at Coffin and Trout Fine Jewelers full time, 40 hours a week. And I've really found that the two are very complementary to each other because the things I learn at these retailers all around the country help with my day job and vice versa. So I think there's no conflict, but it works out really well.
Very cool. So when you partner with somebody, when somebody's renting your brain, as you say, what are you particularly helping them with or helping them do?
That's a good question. It took me a little bit of time to kind of solidify that, but I'd say that there's three areas and there's lots of ways to translate it, but strategy, culture, and leadership. Strategy, if you don't know how to do things, I can help with that. There's a lot of there's a lot of jewelers in particular that have an unhealthy culture, or they don't have the culture that they really want to have. And we talk about how to really put your money where your mouth is or create the culture that you want. And then leadership, there's a lot of times when a leader or an owner of a business will know in their mind what they want the business to be. But if they can't communicate that, that's what leadership is in my mind, is communicating and then putting everyone on the same page. So I help with all three of those areas: strategy, culture, and leadership.
Very, that's, what's your, I'll come take a half step back here a little bit I want to let people know where you're located. Where are you located in the United States?
I'm physically in Phoenix, but I work in all different time zones.
Okay. So how do, when you're kind of dealing with, those kind of three buckets, strategy, leadership, and culture, are, is it somebody who reaches out to you and just says, I'm I'm really struggling with how to communicate with my team, and can you help me with that? Or is it like, is it just kind of one of those, or is it as you're kind of working with clients, maybe it's culture initially, but then you're like, oh, it's now a strategy and a leadership issue. Are they kind of dovetailed all together? Or do you come in and just work with just purely on culture? Or, hopefully I'm making sense when I'm asking
Yeah,
these
you
questions.
are. You're
Okay.
actually very perceptive. The way that it almost always plays out is there's some pain point. There's something that they're having a problem with, whether it's hiring the right people or getting the right jewelry for their clients, or their systems are a mess and they are not inconsistent with the way they're taking in repairs or custom projects. There's almost always some particular pain point. And then, at least as they view it, sometimes they view it as one area, but again, as an outsider with some experience, I can see actually your issue is more systemic, or, it's either strategy, culture, or leadership, but all of those play in for sure. And um, almost always there's components of each. Rarely does any independent jeweler have two of the three totally dialed in, and the third
Yeah.
is a mess.
Yeah. It's as a, we're both, consultants in our own right. I always use the analogy, you can't read the label from inside the jar. you know,
Love it.
uh, you need somebody to come in like yourself to go, hey, okay, this is what's really happening here. And, here's how you diagnose that. Here's how you work through that as a leader or as a team. Or, what I found what was interesting, as I was going through doing a little bit of research on your website, you have this, what is it called? Client advisory boards that you sometimes implement into your clients' businesses. Can you explain what that is so somebody understands
I was
what that?
hoping you would ask.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite things to implement, and it is a really valuable tool. It does take a little bit of work, but with the right facilitator, you can kind of you can skip some of the missteps that have been made in the past. But the concept is very simple. It's basically a focus group of some of your best type of clients. So a subset of your best client, and then asking them questions about how they would like to see your business better, or how they
Mm,
would like to see your business. And then some things you change, and some things you say, well, we'll never change that because the client advisory board loves it and they're a subset of our best clients. That could be anything. It could be as simple as what music do we play in the store, or the dress code of the staff, or it could, more often, it's what lines of jewelry should we carry, what should we lines should we kill. Any question that a jeweler would ask is probably best asked of your client rather than another jeweler. And to be able to really have a pulse on what those best clients care about and what resonates with them is just huge in every aspect. It can be charitable giving, it can be community involvement. Maybe they care that you donate to the local food shelf. Maybe they don't.
mm,
Um, every market is so different all around the country, and every jeweler really finds their own niche, and or hopefully they find something to differentiate themselves from the other jeweler down the road. So you can't even answer it for a market. You need to answer those questions for the specific jeweler, and the clients are the only ones that can, or the best answer.
So when you kind of implement that, are you guiding those conversations? Or are you teaching the jeweler leadership team to ask those questions on a continual basis? Like, how does that work?
It's a collaborative effort. Basically, I get them to kind of free flow about what questions they would want, and then I craft the questions, and we curate the group and have them actually come together in a physical setting. It's a little bit of a party, and then I ask the questions at least the first time. I've done it as many as three different times, so it's like on a quarterly basis. And some owners are uncomfortable asking those questions and would prefer to have an outside person, and others are perfectly comfortable. But even then, I say, let me do it the first time and watch the way I do it, because you don't want to lead the witness. It's a lot of it is how you ask the question. As an interviewer, you know that if you ask me a question a certain way to get the answer you want, it's not as all telling as if you just open it up and help me a little bit along the way. It's the same
Hmm.
thing with the client advisory board. When those clients are asked questions in the right way, they will tell you anything and everything you could ever imagine about your community and what they love about you and what they don't love. It's awesome.
Wow, that's amazing. What uh, in the I mean, I'm kind of unfamiliar with, I guess, the world of jewelry coaching and guiding, advising. Um, in your particular sphere. So, what sets you apart? What do you think sets you apart from maybe other people in the space, like maybe other kind of jewelry store owner consultants?
Well, frankly, there's not that many of us. And there are some really, really talented people in the space, but most of them have had a different career trajectory than I have. Most of them have worked with bigger jewelers. So most of them have worked for corporations, to where my career has primarily been focused around owner operators. That I worked for a company that had 16 stores at one time. That was a large chunk of my career. Many times it's been up to 5 stores, as few as one. And so to work with an owner operator as opposed to a big company, I guess I'm better with the small guys, is what I'm saying. My sweet
Yeah.
spot is like jewelers that do between like $1 and $5 or $6 million and have between 1 and 4 or 5 stores.
Hmm.
Hopefully they do 1 to 4 or 5 million per store, not necessarily total.
Yeah, total. We got one store that makes $5 a month. You're
Exactly.
like,
Right, right, right.
that's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's my kind of
Your little sweet spot.
differentiation, is that I work with those jewelers that are um, in that, generally in a growth mindset, and not so much a jeweler that's been around for 100 years and just wants to keep the lights on, because frankly, they're not that interested and might not even have the ability to be nimble and implement some of these great ideas I'm able to present. I kind of had to learn that a little early on in the consulting, is that like I'm not for everyone. And if just because someone will hire me, if they won't implement some of the changes, they're not going to see the results.
Yeah. What's the point, right?
It's yeah, what's the point? It's
Yeah.
no fun for either of us.
The joy of being a consultant, they pay you for your advice and they don't take it
Exactly. Yeah.
or implement it. They may
Right.
like it, but they don't implement it.
And
Oh boy.
sometimes they just don't have the infrastructure to do so, and they just don't have the will. And some of these third, fourth generation owners might have a little bit of, they might not be financially incentivized to make those changes. They might be okay without making them, to where uh, a, a newer first generation might be a little hungrier, and they might say, okay, we're paid this guy to tell us what to do, we're going to do it.
That's you bring it, Philip, you bring up an interesting uh, concept that I've been curious about is the multi-generational stores. I have a good friend of mine who just took over his father's store. It's a very well-known store in Chicago, and his father passed away, and now this guy is in the son is in his maybe 60s, and I'm wondering, are you seeing, or maybe look at your past experience of working with different jewelers around the country? Do you see that as they kind of get into that third, fourth generation, that they are kind of in that coasting mindset
I've
of
seen, go ahead, I'm sorry.
no, go ahead, yeah.
I've seen both sides of that for sure. I've seen the next gen, as I like to call them, that really want to make their own mark, and some of them are doing a great job, and they have all the advantages. They've got the business school education, they've got the GIA when they were a kid, and they have all the contacts all over the world, and they're just going to take mom and dad's legacy and take it to the next level. And then I definitely see some where frankly they're in the wrong business, but they don't see any other option for themselves. They are not necessarily hardwired to be good retailers. But you find yourself 50 years old, taking over a store. You've been working there for 30 years. You don't really love the business, but what else are you going to do? And some of
Mm.
those do ride it out. And it's sad to me because I think in this country, you ought to be able to do, most people with reasonable opportunities ought to be able to do something they at least enjoy, if not love.
So my question is to you, when you have you ever encountered a client, you don't have to give names, like that, where they're just in that space of, hey, I've been here because it's my great grandfather's store and I'm just, it's all I've known, kind of that picture you just you put out there of that type of client. How do you get them, if they were to reach out to you and you start working with them, how do you make them make that switch? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you have any tips or tricks that you've learned or strategies?
They either have to get the passion or quit the business. And I've worked with clients that have done both. I've worked with clients that have got the passion, and in that case, I just said we'd had a tough heart to heart talk, and it was not in the store. It was over dinner after 3 days of consulting. The conversation was, what are your favorite parts of this business? And how much do you like that part? And this particular jeweler, who was third generation, he told me some components that he really loved, he was really good at. And I said, can we look at your team? And at that point, I knew his team pretty well. Can we task your team with doing the stuff that you are frankly not that great at and don't love? And over about 6 months, we were able to shift some of those duties and responsibilities to other team members, and they were much more professionally fulfilled because they were doing something that they were good at and that was needed. And he didn't have to sweat that stuff that he just dreaded. So it was just
Mm.
about delegation. That goes back to the leadership component, but he didn't know that that was okay to delegate those things, and he had no skills in delegation. So we worked on a couple of basic things, and I stayed on for 2.5, 3 years just as kind of a liaison between the leadership team, and it was very valuable to everybody. And they're killing it. They're doing great. They've increased their volume probably 40%, increased their
Wow.
or decreased their turnover of their team. They were running through people all the time. Clients seem happier, making more money. It's been great.
That, it's always interesting, those, like, as a consultant, you can see those little levers that you can pull, um, that make a big difference on the long haul, right?
Mm-hmm.
And having, your background of being, 40 years, 30, 40
40,
years
40 plus. Yeah.
in the industry, like, you've learned a thing or two, right? So you know what those levers are. I'm gonna switch gears a little bit on you. And I don't know if this is going to be applicable to maybe the consulting side of what you do, or the store that the brick and mortar store that you're working with now. What are some of the things that are getting your attention the most these days? Like, is it, sales because of the economy? Is it tariffs impacting things? Like, what are you seeing from your end?
The jewelers that are doing great have done something to make themselves stand apart from the crowd. They have some point of differentiation, because if you're just a generic jeweler, and this every city has them, every city has too many of them, then you don't have anything other than your proximity to the neighborhood. And that's not enough. But if you have a point of differentiation, and I don't care whether if it's, we specialize in the coolest estate jewelry from all over the world, or we make the most modern, funky designs that win awards that you can imagine. It frankly doesn't matter what your position is, but you have to really know it and hone it and stick to it. So kind of stay in your lane, right? But you got to know what your lane is to stay in it. And there's so many of these flashy things off to the right and the left that distract us and look like either easy sources of revenue or look like this is where the whole industry is going that distract us from who we are. And that's dangerous. Did I answer the question?
Yeah, I think you are. Yeah, I call it the shiny object syndrome.
That's exactly. Yeah, yeah.
You're like, ooh,
Or or
or like
squirrel,
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 like, oh,
squirrel.
yeah, I could do that. Oh, wow.
Yeah, you go to JCK, you go to the jewelry show, and then there's all of this particular thing, and you think, well, that's interesting. We've never sold those. Let's try that or
Yeah.
something different. Yeah.
Okay. Um, so are in either your consulting practice or in this in your 40 hour an hour or day job, how are you leveraging AI these days, or are you leveraging AI?
Yeah. So I guess I'm kind of a newcomer myself, but I use Chat GPT every day. And frankly, it might be something as simple. Again, I'm not a technology expert. It's definitely an area where I'm a weakness. And I think it's because of no hair and the gray beard. But,
Amen.
but but luckily I have some people on my team that have helped me, and I'm always curious about technology, so I'm willing to stick my nose in and try stuff. So I use Chat GPT every day, and it might be simply a matter of typing an email, and I put it in Chat GPT and say it's not as cohesive as I'd like, or the tone is a little sharp. I need to tone that down, and rather than rewriting the whole thing, I can tell Chat GPT, make me sound less like a jerk, or make the tone a little nicer. And
Yeah.
so I use Chat GPT every single day for something like that. I've had some success with like very simple graphic things, but most of the time I feel like the graphic stuff is best left to a true graphic artist. But I've been able to communicate with my graphics team like this, but make it look good.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And
So where do you see the biggest potential of AI in the jewelry industry? Specifically with like those mom and pop, owner operated businesses.
well, there's so much of their own communication that is lacking. It could be internal, could be external. It could be an email to your own team that thanking them for a job well done. Again, I think using the tools that just like you would use spell check to make you look like you know how to spell, you
Hmm.
would use Chat GPT to organize your thoughts. And if when I send out a quarter kind of recapping the quarter, I want to thank people, and Chat GPT will help me do that in a kind way and make sure I get everybody, and just helps you not miss things that you might miss. And it's probably mostly a time saver, but it can improve the quality and draw in vocabulary that I might not normally go to.
Yeah,
That might be
yeah.
appropriate.
So what kind of shifting gears a bit again, what kind of stage are you in kind of both of your businesses, the business you work for and then your consultancy, your agency? What are you, you kind of, because you're kind of doing, you have your toes in both ponds, right? In the agency world, when you're doing kind of outside your day job, what are you just kind of like, you looking to get more clients? Or are you kind of in a growing stage? Or are you just kind of like whatever comes in? And then on the brick and mortar side, what's the stage of the building, the business in that light? Are you in the building stage, growing stage, refining stage, readjustment stage? I don't know. I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, that's good. Those are interesting questions. In Bosen Associates, the jeweler's coach side, I would say that I have a luxury of being able to pick and choose certain clients, and I usually just keep two or three at a time. That's all I can. It's all I want to do, and all I can do
Yeah.
effectively is two
Yeah.
or three at a time. And I kind of consider myself a little bit like a chiropractor sometimes. Like some chiropractors, some clients, maybe you're going to have to go every week for the rest of your life, and other people, you're going to crack their back and send them on their way, and they're good for 5 more years until they get out of adjustment again. So understanding the consultancy is going to have long-term people and short-term people, and some that you help them get over a hurdle and then you don't hear from them again for a little while. And that's okay. I would say in the consultancy, it's more of kind of a maintaining mode, but because of the very nature of the business, I have to always be keeping my eyes open and getting my name out there and publishing content a little bit and just staying relevant to the industry.
Mhm.
And then at my day job as the sales director, we're growing, and the business is 41 years old. It's well established. It is doing fantastic. Even in this, I want to knock on some wood with the in this this strange times, but so we're maintaining there. But on an individual basis, I want each associate that works for me. We have 10 associates. I want each of them to improve, and I know that will improve the business. So, as a 3 to 5 year employee hones her craft and gets better at 6 figure sales, that is going to grow the business, and it does grow the business. But we're not so much in the stage of actively pursuing every new bit of business that we can get. We're working with the existing clientele. Obviously, we do SEO. Obviously, we do social media. You can't not do, and we do advertising. You can't not do those things and expect your business to grow, because through attrition, there's always people that are leaving and moving on and passing away and that sort of thing. So you always need those 25-year-old new clients. But most of the time, we find those best new clients come from the existing clients. And that goes back to satisfying that if you really know who your base is and who your best client is, and you can do the things to satisfy them, make them happy, they will bring the new people, the right new people, not just new people, but the right new people all the time. And that could be a 30-year-old surgeon that earns $700,000 that moved from a small town and doesn't have a jeweler and likes nice things. That's
Mhm.
that's a that's a 30-year-old, but that's a great client.
Yeah.
That kid's got a 40-year purchase span coming up.
Hmm. So, I always say it's cheaper to sell to clients you've already earned
It's also more fun.
versus buying, paying to acquire new clients.
And we do both.
Yeah,
We
you
we
need to do
you
both,
have to do
but
both,
yeah,
but it's
yeah,
it's not only cheaper, it's more profitable, it's more fun, it's more personally rewarding, because you learn about them and their families and the relationships. Those webs are just much more personally rewarding. I mean, people like people, and good salespeople connect with humans, and it's easier to do that if you have some commonality, even if it's just that, my brother-in-law sent me in and he says, you guys are great. Well, then the first 5 minutes can be about the brother-in-law and what you do together. And then you just say like, okay, now let's just find or make you a piece of jewelry. That's the easy part.
yeah. And there's something satisfying about, or I bet your reward. I'm putting words in your mouth. Is knowing that when you're working with a client, that you're giving them some sort of legacy, right? Because typically in the jewelry world, not always the case, but more or less, it's something that's going to be used for a long period of time, like in their life, and then
Generations.
maybe passed down to kids and, and all that. So I bet you there's a bit of satisfaction in there, right? Of knowing that you're helping somebody make that decision.
Many of us in the jewelry industry have studied gemology at the Jewelry and Gemological Institute of America and other places like that. And I have as well. And I learned all the technical stuff, and it's just rocks and metal until it's given to somebody else. And then it's not. And then it becomes imbued with power and legacy and meaning that is so much deeper. And it could be that you give it to yourself. That's not that
Yeah.
everything has to be gifted, but
Yeah.
it becomes more. But truly, until it crosses that 18 inches of glass, it is just rocks and metal. Even if it's beautifully designed and all the things that are that we try to do right going into it. But once it becomes yours, it becomes more than that.
Yeah, that's what's so interesting about particularly the jewelry industry. I've had the fortunate opportunities to to interview a few different people in different levels or different stages of the jewelry industry. You're kind of my first within the consulting world, but it's really I never really considered that before or never really thought about that before until I started thinking until somebody mentioned that to me. And then I started thinking about, oh, my wife has her grandmother's wedding ring. You know what I mean? Like that's third generation.
That's incredible.
And then it'll probably be passed down to my daughter at some point. So it's just that, you know what I mean? Like I never really thought about that. Maybe as a man, I really don't think about that. So maybe it's a gender thing or maybe it's just a me thing, I guess. I until somebody mentioned to me, I was like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, that's, and then there's people along the way like yourself who either support those stores and those business owners to continue doing that, or, and then also in your day job, you get to now do that every day and work with your team to do that. Like such a rewarding job, like
Absolutely.
that you get to take what the world what this planet makes and craft something that gets passed down or gifted or kept to be used. So sorry, I kind of went on a little bit of a tangent there. Sorry about
No,
that.
that's great. And the group that needs to know to be reminded the most of that is not the males that buy it, although they do, and not the females because they already got it. They know that, but it's the people that are selling the jewelry because we get so wrapped up into the color and clarity and carat weight and all this alphabet soup that is important, and it's important to be accurate, but that is not the most important thing. It's what's it going to mean to the individual that is either gifted it or purchases it. That's what it matters much longer than whether it's VS1 or VS2 clarity.
Yeah. So kind of extending this conversation a bit more in your store that you work in now as your sales director, is there a particular win that you've had, like a story that you can share where you've helped somebody?
I would say that my biggest win most recently there is with one particular associate who English was not her first language. And I could always tell I don't speak Spanish, but she's a native Spanish speaker. When she got a Spanish speaking customer, her excitement level and her animation level was much higher than most of the day when she's speaking to English speakers. Her English is perfect. You wouldn't know that she's not a native English speaker, but I challenged her to try to bring that same level of enthusiasm and excitement to the English speaking clients and helped her identify that if I was to videotape her with no sound because I don't know what she's saying, it's a whole different presentation with the one than the other. And we were able to work on that. And I would say she's probably went from 50% excitement or animation level with the one with the English speakers to probably 85, 90% as much as she is with Spanish speakers. So to see her progress and improve and kind of get it, like that is what's exciting to people is that it's you that's exciting to them and the way you bring this to them. So just do the same thing. And then to see her have six-figure sales that come from that level of connecting, um, almost immediate payoff, and then great reviews from people that love her and can see that she's giving the level of care and concern that she would want to give. Those things that would be on the store side. And then on the consultancy side, I would say a recent win is a woman contacted me 6 months or so ago that had an idea. She owns bridal stores where you sell wedding gowns and that sort of thing. And she owns several of those in a major market. And she said, I just feel like I could get into the jewelry business. And I was able to help her get into the jewelry business. And she said, I'm willing to pay to avoid some missteps. She said, if I'd had a coach getting into the bridal business, the right coach, I could have avoided some missteps and gotten to where I wanted to be faster and with more profit. So someone that kind of got the concept of coaching, and I was willing to pay to rent my brain straight out. And we were able to help her make some connections and start a successful business, and a whole nother successful business layered on top of the business that she's already got.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it makes sense, right? Like you got people who are buying, buying jewelry, they're going to get married most likely. So in some cases, you know, or vice versa, they've already been engaged to you, but they want more stuff to make their special day possible. Like
In her
make,
case,
make,
the thing that was
makes
the
sense.
most attractive is she said they spend on average 9 months with a bride to be, which, I was married 100 years ago, so I don't remember any of that stuff. But 9 months of clienteling, of learning about this family, and then all that data and those relationships to be able to springboard that into a jewelry client. Because otherwise, in her case, once the wedding's over, what happens with that relationship? Does it just go away?
Yeah.
Kind of
Yeah.
just fizzled out, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but jewelry can, with that same client, it could kind of go into many other purchases and decades of business together.
That's awesome. I found, I just talked to a friend of mine the other day who, I mean, this is kind of a quick side story, but he worked with a tailor, a bride's tailor, a wedding dress tailor.
I knew what you meant.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get to. My coffee hasn't kicked in today, apparently, and like he just kind of went in, and it's kind of the same thing. She just picked his brain, and he was able to like literally double or triple her business in like 6 months because she was charging way too less. Like she's one of the best wedding dress tailors in Southern California, and people are coming down from like Hollywood and like crazy places to see her, and she was not charging enough. So
Wow.
she just needed a little bit of a realignment, and same kind of thing. So that's awesome that you're able to help her break into a new market and build a whole new avenue of her business you know, that's amazing. So here's kind of a kind of shifting gears into more of the marketing and more marketing side of things. What are you what's one marketing challenge you would like to kind of dial in over the next 6 to 12 months, like either in your consultancy or the store?
So in my consultancy is because I'm kind of a one man show with an admin. It's very organic, but in the beginning, I was basically my marketing was offering to speak on various topics to various jewelers groups around the country, and I have been from one end of this country to the other doing that, and I've been very grateful to be able to speak to alumni groups, American Gem Society groups, various state trade organizations. And that's been really fun and kind of forced me to focus on a presentation, so to speak, and got me in front of a lot of great people and has been hugely valuable. At this point, I am doing less of that simply because I have an obligation full time, and the traveling is exhausting to
Yes,
do
it
that
is.
full time. It's just, it's a lot.
Sounds
And I,
glamorous, but it's a lot. Yeah.
yeah, it is glamorous for the first year. And then you're
Yeah.
like,
And you're
oh
like,
my
no,
goodness, what
I don't
airport
want to
am I
get on
going
another
to in
plane.
again?
Yeah. I hear you.
So I'd say, from marketing, Bosen Associates, the jeweler's coach, is pretty organic at this point. And, but the good news is I need less clients, with two or three at a time being all
Yeah.
I can handle. It's been word of mouth and jewelers that have jeweler buddies that are in other parts of the country. And they say, you got to talk to this guy. He can really help you. So I kind of feel it's okay, but maybe if I'm being honest, I need to put myself out there and offer my services up a little bit more, because that's really a good way to kind of know my style and my taste and my delivery system. And if you don't like the way I say something, I'm probably not the guy for you because I only have one way. It's me.
Yeah.
And with 20,000 jewelers in the country or whatever there are, and only one me, that's okay. We'll find each other.
Yeah.
I don't need all of them. I don't need a lot of them.
Yeah.
And then on the business side, very much we are marketing. We've kind of kicked up the requesting reviews, and I know that that helps with SEO. And again, clients can read those reviews and get an ongoing sense if they're coming in with some regularity, every week or so with
Hmm.
different sales associates and different products and different experiences. And the client can read that and get a pulse on kind of how does it feel in that store? How are they going to take care of me? So
Hmm.
just actively asking clients at the conclusion of a transaction, you know, if I make it easy, can I count on you for a 5-star review? And if they say yes, I send them a link and then I say, hey, a few kind words and a photo would go a long way. And often you get a photo and kind words and then people come in and just say, I read these reviews and I wanted to see what this was about. I need a piece of jewelry or I'm looking to make a piece of jewelry or a timepiece, whatever the case may be. And I thought I'd give you guys a shot. Again, it just is kind of a window into the store to see how it really happens and from the customer's eyes.
Yeah. Okay. What do you think is the next evolution of both of those buckets?
Well, the next evolution of Bosen Associates, the jeweler's coach, will simply be my retirement job for the after I quit my day job, but don't
Yeah.
want to go off in the sunset. First off, because I just love the business. And
Yeah.
secondly, and it's a great opportunity to transfer that institutional knowledge to others, whether they be the same generation or not. And I just love that. And I think that it could be fun to travel when I want to travel instead of when I have to travel and to be able to be more choosy and well, I'm pretty choosy as it is, but to be able to pick and choose clients that
You know
work
what
with
you want when you want.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And
Okay.
then the evolution of the brick and mortar store is just going to be to continue to grow organically, strategically, the right way, not being distracted by those shiny objects or those squirrels we talked about, and staying in our lane and doing what we do, and remembering that we do have a point of differentiation in the marketplace, and we need to stick to that and do what we do well almost exclusively and not diverge from that.
Here's a I love this question. I've asked this multiple times to different people. If you can wave a metaphorical magic wand in the one thing in the business, what would that be?
We have a problem in the jewelry business overall. Again, it's a big industry, but the problem that I would make go away is dishonesty. I think that there's a lot of people selling jewelry that are dishonest, will exaggerate, will stretch the truth, will lie. And it's hard on those that are trying to do it right because many people assume that that's the situation if they've been burned once before or know of a friend that's been burned. So I would try to raise everyone's integrity to the highest standard. That was a metaphorical magical wand, but to see people just be more honest and forthright and not stretching and exaggerating or lying.
It's the bad apples that ruin it for everybody, right? So, kind of digging into that a bit more. I mean, I know this could be a whole nother conversation, but give me maybe some top line things. So, if somebody is at a jewelry store talking with a jeweler and interested in a particular piece, what would be the indicators that somebody is lying or stretching the truth? How can the consumer know that?
That's a great question, and I don't know that I have a BS detector, but you could certainly. I guess a person kind of look at industry affiliations. Although there's people that are affiliated with great organizations that are don't tell the truth. You could look at reviews and see how often that person's mentioned positively or negatively. You could ask your trusted friend and neighbor what jeweler they use. That's a challenge. So I don't know that I would have a good read on that, because I've shopped thousands of jewelry stores shopping the competitors for my clients, but I know I come with my knowledge of the industry, and I can hear people say things that are not accurate, but I don't know if they're lying or if they're just wrong. And wrong is bad, but lying's worse. So I guess I don't really know how a consumer would not get burned other than
Yeah.
those things that I mentioned.
Just looking at it's not necessarily what is being said per se, but the perception around the store itself or the individual itself. That would be
Yeah. And then
the
there's
indicator. Okay.
and then there's some of those soft skills that are interpersonal, like body language, and does the person look at you in the eye, and did they shake your hand? The stuff our parents taught us, right? That,
Yeah.
like, and part of that is, I could be mistaken there, because there's a whole generation to where that's not natural for them. There's some that get it and understand that to communicate properly to previous generations, they've got to give them a firm handshake and look at them in the eye. But there's a whole generation of young people that's not
Don't.
that's not in their, they just weren't taught that.
Yeah. It's those little body language things. I mean, I remember, so when my kids are little, my mother-in-law all the time would be, I mean, they're like 2 years old. You're like, hey, shake somebody's hand, this is how you grip their hand, this is how you whatever. And now that my kids are 16, 19 and 21, I can see that when they get into a social environment where they're meeting somebody for the first time, they reach out their hand and shake it really strong and all that. And I'm deeply grateful for my mother-in-law really instilling that, because it is kind of a lost art. It's something that's not as common anymore, as you
Right, right.
mentioned, which shows, integrity. What is one piece of business advice you would give to yourself? Like, what would that?
I love that question. And I've listened to a few of your other podcasts, and I've kind of wondered that myself. I've been very fortunate. Not many people get their career at 12 years old and stick with it. I realize that that's a blessing. I'm grateful to my parents for having that little jewelry store and giving me a set of keys at 12 years old. That was crazy, but it seemed to have worked. But I guess if if I was going to do it again, I would go to the Gemological Institute of America in Asia rather than taking it in the United States, because there's so many incredible gemstones and families that are connected to mines and things like that I have no connection with. And
Mm.
when I think of those gemologists that like went to GIA in Asia, they're connected to a whole part of the world that I'm not. I'm a little bit, I don't want to say jealous, but I think there's an opportunity that I just, a whole nother facet of my business knowledge that is lacking for me.
Hmm.
So I guess
I
if I
never.
were advising a young person that was going to be in the jewelry industry, I would say, you're going to take the GIA classes anyway. Go take them over there, and you don't know who you'll meet and what field trips you can take, and you'll have an understanding of the business, definitely unlike an American trained gemologist.
Mhm. And pardon my naivety here, uh, being ignorant. Is there a language barrier when it comes to if somebody was to do that?
I think they teach it all in English. I think it's,
Okay.
yeah. So
Okay.
maybe not
I never would have
everywhere, but
thought of.
kind of in the hot spot of where those great gems come from. I know they teach them in English.
I never would have thought about that. Just going over there to have that extra layer of connections and possibility. So appreciate you sharing that.
Sure.
What do you hope listeners, somebody listening to this or watching this interview walks away with after hearing your story and your journey and the advice that you've given? What is the one thing you're like, if you could just really hone it in, what would that be?
One thing. Oh, that's tough.
It's a hard one, I know.
I guess I would say the best always have a coach. Whatever field it is, Michael Jordan had a coach, Wayne Gretzky had a coach, just everybody at the top of their game gets an outside perspective. So I think jewelers that want to improve their game should have a coach.
Final question. This is more of a fun one. What do you anything particularly you'd like to promote or share? Highlight during this episode. I'm kind of giving you the floor.
Gosh, I would say I'm pretty easy because I have a fairly unusual name. It's Philip with two L's, and the last name is Bosen, Bosen. And I would say go to my website and look and learn a little bit more about what I do and how I can help. And that's just bosenassociates.com, or you can Google the jeweler's coach and it'll take you there. And LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. I think it's a great way to connect with people and kind of read their resume a little bit and see what they've done a little bit. And I've been fairly active on LinkedIn for, I don't know, a dozen years or more. And I think that you can kind of tell a little bit about a person that way. And I'm open to connect with people, particularly in the jewelry space, unless they want to sell me stuff. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
And I would never abuse that the connection. I'm not looking to sell anything to anybody, but I'm looking to serve if I can and if it's a good fit.
Yeah. You know, and so I'll put links around this, by the way. So when I post it, I'll share this on LinkedIn as well. I'll tag you. And then I'll also put links, on YouTube as well, wherever links will be. It's Bosen Associates, BOSEN.com. And I'll make sure you do that. And if you're in the Phoenix area, pop by
Yeah,
and say hello.
please. I'd love to see you.
Yeah, and I'll put a link to the your store too in Phoenix.
Perfect.
So
That'd be great.
if somebody wants to, somebody's in your neck of the woods, or is looking for something in particular, and you need somebody who's trusted, who's been in the game for 40 years, reach out
Yeah.
to Philip. He'll
Thank
help
you.
you out.
Thank you.
So I'll put a couple of those links in there. You know, Dude, thank you so much for spending time with me today. I love your heart and what you're doing. I could tell you have a servant's heart and you just want to help people. And I'm just grateful for all that you've done in your journey in this world. So thank you, man.
Thanks, Justin.
All right. Everybody, tune in next time. And thanks, Philip. And we'll have a great rest of your day.